I absolutely wanted to thank everyone for joining us for our PlayFab webinar. My name is Tom Robbins. I am the Director of Marketing here at PlayFab. And once again, just want to thank everyone for taking the next 30 to 45 minutes out of their day to hear more about PlayFab. Our goal today for today's webinar is to really work or discuss kind of the basics of PlayFab. It really is just the beginning of a series of webinars that we're going to be doing, and we'll be talking a little bit more around that. I am really excited to have joining me Scott Willoughby, who's our Director of Game Operations Success, who's also going to be co-hosting this webinar with me.
Hello, everyone.
So during the webinar, if you have questions, feel free to send in the questions. So you should have a question pane. It's usually on your right-hand side that you can send in, and we'll try to keep an eye on questions and answer the ones that we can. So without further waiting, let's go ahead and get started.
So the quote you see on the screen, this is Scott Willoughby, Director of Game Operations Success here at PlayFab. So my background is in the gaming industry. I've been around for several years, worked at several studios as the game industry has progressed into the live service model with, a lot of games moving into the free-to-play and freemium space. And I think this quote from the CEO of Nexon really explains why we believe PlayFab is important and why we are working so hard to help solve problems for game studios in the modern era. As this quote says, the single greatest predictor of success and sustainable competitive advantage in this business really is live game operations. And we found that to be true for so many of our partners and so many of the studios we work with. As some of you may remember, the game space has evolved a lot over time. So Tom's going to tell you a little bit about what PlayFab is and how we're working to solve these problems for game developers in the modern gaming era.
Thanks, Scott. So if you're not familiar with PlayFab, let's just take a step back a second and really kind of talk about what PlayFab is, because I think this is probably the first question people ask. We consider PlayFab to basically be four things that we provide. The first is a set of APIs, and these enable game developers to solve real-world problems as they build their games, be able to store everything from player data to economy data to being able to do matchmaking, a lot of things that we'll talk about in a little bit, but it's these RESTful APIs that enable developers to really start tapping into a lot of the live game operations things that Scott was talking about and enabling them in their games, whether they're kind of premium or or free to play. The second thing that PlayFab provides is a set of web tools, and our web tools that we're going to look at in a little bit is the front entry point or the mission control for where game operators, whether they're marketers or developers or kind of anyone, can really interact with their players or be able to look at reports, be able to look at dashboards and live events, and to really understand what's going on in their game, whether it's how players, what kinds of things players are purchasing, whether you're going to be running live events, or just, basic maintenance of your players. The third is PlayFab works very hard to create a set of partnerships. We realize, obviously, at the end of the day, that it's a very large ecosystem that's built around games, and we want to be a central hub of that for developers so that you're really not having to integrate kind of SDK after SDK after SDK. So we create partnerships, and we've got partnerships with a wide variety, everyone from Photon to Xbox to PS4, which is really designed to make it easier for game developers to extend the features that they need. And we realize, for example, that we can't build everything, so we want to partner with that and make PlayFab kind of the one SDK that you need to work with, and then you get a set of features on top of that. And the last thing is we focus on education, and that's kind of what this webinar is today, and other webinars that we're going to be doing. We realize that helping developers kind of grow and understand everything from, well, how do I enable my game for live game operations? How can I attract more users? How can I get downloads? I mean, these are all things that anyone in the game business is very interested in and become super essential as we start to think about how we're going to grow our business. So at the end of the day, it's this set of education that I think is going to be very exciting for a lot of people out there, whether you're using PlayFab or not. But fundamentally, you're looking to understand a lot of the way that you can build out your business moving forward.
So let's take a trip back in time to the old days, circa about 2009, 2010, when building a game consisted of your studio building a game, getting a gold master ready to go, you handing it off to your marketing or publishing partners or internal people, and they take that out to market. And you hope users will give you their 50, 60 bucks up front, but you don't have to worry about it after that. It is printed, it is packaged, it is shipped, it is purchased, and then you just kind of wait, sit back, watch the money come in, and watch the ratings of your game. That world barely exists anymore. Even games that are for consoles, and have a high price point aren't pure free-to-play games. This is not the world we live in anymore. Games now have to operate as a service. It's what customers expect, and it's what every successful game studio has found they need to do to succeed. This is what the world looks like now. Before you ever launch, you have to not just build your game and design a fantastic game, you have to build the tools to be able to operate it as a live service. You need the back-end infrastructure. You need the server infrastructure to be able to host the game and update content to it. And launch day, that's really the starting line. That's not the finish line anymore. This is where the work really begins, when your game goes out into the world, and then you need to start building relationships with your customers anymore. It's not just build it and they will come, and then you can walk away from it and start working on your next project. Games today, games as a service, need to operate in an ecosystem where they're consistently building relationships with customers, building new content, keeping them engaged. And in order to do that, there's a lot of work that needs to go into it. You need to have intelligence to know what your customers are doing, how your players are interacting with your game, what's working, what isn't, what's resonating with them and what isn't. You need to be able to offer live customer service over the lifetime of a player to be able to work out any issues they might be having with live service gaming, PvP gaming, ongoing account maintenance and status, any transition between releases or versions of the game. You need to be able to segment and target your customers, because we all know nowadays that one-size-fits-all marketing doesn't work for live game services. If you want to be really successful, you need to look at some of the strategies that e-commerce and digital web marketing have been using for years, which is really trying to treat each customer as an individual and identifying their behaviors and trying to help motivate them into the sorts of actions that you know are going to create deeper engagement and hopefully better monetization with them over time. You need to be able to find those users and then engage them quickly when they come into the game, because there's a lot of competition for that user's attention these days. There are more game studios than ever before. There are more games being released than ever before. And because of the free-to-play model and the freemium model, users have a very low barrier to entry. So you have to build commitment from them after they're in your game. You don't already have it up front because of that initial purchase. You need to build a relationship with them over time in order to get them to engage with your product and become monetizers and become lifelong customers of not just the game you start them in, but hopefully future games as well, creating a network effect for your studio and the success of you and your partners. So you need to be able to update your content consistently. You need to be able to put out offers and promotions, put these things in front of them, host in-game events to keep people engaged over the long term, and then again be able to identify what's working and what isn't, and tune your audience, tune your strategies, tune your product over time. And to be able to do all this, you need tools and you need technology, and that technology and those tools are very, very difficult to build. That's the problem PlayFab is trying to solve for game developers these days. So if any of you are like me, I'm not an engineer. I am a marketer, I'm a game operator, I'm a business manager, and have been for many games and many studios over the last several years. This scares me. This diagram is difficult for me, because what this means, if I don't have excellent tools for operating my game, is that anytime I want to make a change to my game, I need to go to my engineering team and take time out of their schedule trying to develop the latest and greatest to get them to make a change for me. What PlayFab does is takes all this big diagram, and we become the experts. We are the professionals doing this all for you behind the scenes. You don't need to distract your team with solving these problems. You don't need to spend all the lead time before you even get your game launched figuring out what technology you're going to use, what stack you're going to build on, how much it's going to cost, how many people are you going to need on your team, what happens if one of them leaves. You have a team of experts in the industry with bulletproof, bomb-proof, proven, high-end technology, constantly evolving it, making sure it is cutting edge on your team through us to make sure your game is rock solid, performant, and at the cutting edge of what we're capable of in free-to-play networked live gaming space. So all of that said, I'm going to let Tom talk a little bit about some of the benefits that you can expect to see out of working with PlayFab to solve these problems for you.
Thanks, Scott. So one of the things that I want to spend kind of a few minutes on is talking about some of the benefits, and we tend to think of them across two audiences. Obviously, developers, and I think Scott really kind of showcased the biggest thing that we want to think about is this idea of not having to build the infrastructure. We at PlayFab have spent a lot of man-years building out infrastructure, which you saw kind of on the AWS side, building out on the AWS side to really make it so that you don't really have to worry about that. And part of our goal is to really create kind of this best-in-class technology that makes it available immediately. And the idea is that as your game scales as a developer, you really don't have to think about, gee, I need to add more servers, or wow, I wonder how much bandwidth I have. And it's one of the things that we as the experts are heavily focused on. The other is not needing to hire a back-end team. I mean, we've been talking with some of the game developers, you know, on the indie side and on some of the others, and we hear that in order to run a really viable back-end, you need anywhere between 3 to 7 people. And if you think about that, that's a very scary number of people that you need, and kind of on an upfront cost, because you have to figure out where your servers are, how you're going to manage your servers, and then you also have to kind of think through this idea of how much upfront cost there is. So PlayFab is worked very closely with this idea of we'll build out a super strong, bulletproof AWS-based infrastructure that makes it easy for developers to access these RESTful APIs, to be able to send data back and forth in a secure manner, and be able to do a bunch of things, right? Authentication at its simplest, but also things like receipt verification, all in a very cost-effective model. For publishers, we think about this idea of being able to share tools across games, right? Because part of this idea is being able to share across means I can do things like take players from one game or take the whales from one game and maybe direct them over to another game as well. Be able to see which segments are active within a game, and then be able to manage them appropriately so that we can either increase the lifetime value. And then obviously, I mean, at the end result of this, it's really all about the funding going to the game. So we think about this idea of not having to spend upfront money, not having to look at the massive tech costs, being able to implement this easily as part of your development environment, and kind of moving that across. So these are just some of the benefits that are there. We'll have Scott talk quickly around the idea of the do-it-yourself, and this is what we tend to hear a lot from developers.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So you can kind of see on this chart sort of represents a typical game that is fairly successful, 100,000 peak DAU, monetizing pretty well, 95% decay rate. So it's a game that lasts about 3 years, which is fairly typical performance for a casual mobile game that does pretty well and seeks a big audience. What you see here is that the area under the curve for blue, which is the do-it-yourself solution, this is building a team in-house, finding your own technology solutions, building it from scratch, is substantially more expensive. The human capital overhead is massive. compared to PlayFab. The technology implementation overhead is massive. The server hosting, compared to what we can offer, even if you're trying to do an AWS solution yourself, individual developers don't get the benefit of economies of scale that we have. We have thousands of developers working on our platform. We have dozens of games that are live with many tens of thousands of DAU. And we are able to leverage that to get the best possible rates for all of our customers on the web services that we use and the server hosting that we use. What this doesn't show, though, is the risk of success. So, I've worked with a lot of game studios over the years and seen a lot of different approaches to struggling with the do-it-yourself model, building your own server infrastructure. There are studios that I've worked with that have virtually limitless resources, that have virtually limitless dev teams and talent available to them, that struggle with keeping their servers up under loads of even 10 to 15,000 concurrent users. Now, here's what I can tell you. If your game is great and you launch it and you're fortunate enough to get, for instance, an editor's choice placement in the App Store, or even a what's new placement, or a best new games placement in the App Store, you will blow those numbers out of the water. And you need to really ask yourself, can your do-it-yourself solution handle tens of thousands of concurrent users, hundreds of thousands, or even 1 million DAU in an install surge at launch? That's the big problem with success, is that do-it-yourself solutions are rarely capable of handling those kinds of numbers. We have bulletproof technology that we have tested time and time again and really put through the ringer. We've tested up to over 100 million DAU. We have tens of thousands of concurrent users every day, and we know how to scale and handle these things. And most importantly, we have a dedicated engineering team that's only job is to make sure that we have the most stable, most secure technology to keep your game up and running. Because honestly, your studio, I don't care if you're one of the biggest studios in the world, if you're an EA, or if you're an individual developer working out of your own home, if your game launches and you are fortunate enough to have success and get attention on it, you can't afford to have your servers go down. You're losing money, you're losing users, and you may be losing the biggest opportunity your game is ever going to have. So the risk of not having the sort of stability that we can provide is not calculated in this. But even without that, you can clearly see that there's a massive cost savings to using systems that we have and using PlayFab as your partner. The other nice thing, as you can see for small studios getting started up, there's no upfront cost here. You can develop your game on PlayFab completely for free. You don't have to start paying anything until after your game launches and you start getting users. Building your own studio, you're paying salaries, you're paying hosting costs, you're paying all these other things up front before you're able to start even generating revenue, which for small studios can be a real problem. It can be a showstopper. And even for big studios, it's a serious economic issue to consider. So there are real cost savings as well as performance advantages to using a system like PlayFab, where we can focus on the back end for you. You can just focus on building the game, making it as good as possible, and thinking about how you're going to use the tools to really reach and engage those users. So Tom's going to take you through a demo now. We've talked a little bit about what PlayFab can do. Tom's going to take you through a demo now and kind of show you around the product so you can see what we have today. The important thing to remember is, because we are constantly working on this, we are always evolving the product, always evolving to meet the state of the art of the industry as well as our customers' needs, to make sure that we have the best possible platform for everybody to use.
So thanks, Scott. So let's hop out and we'll go over to our product here. So just to give everyone a quick background, hopefully everyone here already has created a developer account. If not, please go to playfab.com. You can create a developer account with basically your email and a password. And then once you get into PlayFab, you can then go ahead and create a title and your studio, which will then give you access to what's called our game manager, which you're seeing here. I want to take a few minutes and kind of walk you through some of the features in the game manager. And if you think about this, this is our set of web tools, which is where a lot of the business managers or marketers or developers will spend time kind of tuning their tuning their game, also being able to understand what's going on within their game. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about that, give you kind of a quick tour. The other thing is that we will be doing some more detailed drill downs into things like Game Manager with our developer success folks over the next couple of weeks. So please keep an eye on that. So within our Game Manager on our main page, as you can see here, we've got kind of our overviews, kind of our daily active users, the API calls, because my game today is that I'm working on here is in test mode, or excuse me, development mode. So it's kind of showing me some of the high level things going on within my game. We obviously have a set of settings, so things like where you can store credentials. We also have a very extensive set of user permissions. So this allows me to kind of figure out who's an admin, who maybe can work on different areas of the product, which becomes super important as you think about making sure that people are in the right places and being able to do the right information. The second is obviously managing your players and being able to look at your players. So I'm in a demo game here, so you can see we've kind of got the name of our players, kind of the day they created and then when they had their last login. And then kind of you click on this, you can see a bunch of things, right? I can look at kind of linked accounts. So this is kind of a really nice thing as you especially go across platform. And being able to have people be able to log into kind of the Game Center account or their Steam account. We also are able to look at things like multiplayer games, kind of purchases, logins, inventory, which is kind of super important as you think about how the player's managing their inventory, and virtual currency, which we'll kind of talk about in a few minutes, and being able to manage kind of the player data and then player stats. So these are things that are incredibly important as we think about kind of managing our player specifically and being able to understand kind of what our player's doing, how they're interacting with the system, are they, what maybe we can do to help them kind of stay engaged within it or continue to engage more. Just kind of quickly, the next thing is looking at the economy. So, this includes everything from catalogs to currencies. So being able to do things like look at a set of key value pairs that you can see here, manage those. So if we have our treasure chest, we have a description, we kind of have the usage, and then being able to kind of understand how these things may be tied together. So for example, I need a key to open a treasure chest and how the treasure chest becomes locked or unlocked. These are all things that I can manage, as well as pricing and then kind of bundling and how these things become bundled together. So obviously catalogs and then currencies are a huge part of this, and being able to understand how to manage your currency and then tying that into stores. So if you want to create specific kinds of stores for people, a common example might be, maybe you want to run a weekend sale. You can create a discount store that maybe only runs over the weekend, or just a normal store as people go along. And then things like drop tables, especially, drop tables and loot tables become important as you think about, probabilities, especially within card games and things like that. Being able to make sure that, you've got kind of the right odds that people are going to be able to get. And the good news is, right, that you're managing all of this from the server. So when your client talks to the server, you've got all of this happening on the back end. So that becomes incredibly important, especially as you're thinking about how to do things like secure your game. Also, things like notifications. So being able to do push notifications to segments and coupons, these are incredibly important things that allow you to manage your game effectively. Servers, so as I said earlier, we do support integration with Photon. I do want to call out something that's called Cloud Script, which is an incredibly powerful aspect of how PlayFab works. So many times I may want to do things like, as a player levels up, I might want to run a specific set of script that maybe grants them some things. You know, and I don't want to modify the game, right? Because every time I modify the game, I've got to resubmit it into, you know, Apple or somewhere else. Cloud Script allows you to do that, and it's really basically JavaScript that allows you to kind of run what's going on. And as you can see in this example, I think we're doing the update statistics, and it makes it very easy because we're controlling kind of the revision numbers. But Cloud Script is an incredibly important and powerful feature within PlayFab that allows you to, you know, I often think of kind of the MacGyvering of my game, right? I want to be able to control things or manage things, and Cloud Script kind of gives me that aspect of being able to control that. I did want to talk quickly about things like servers. We do support game servers, and we see people, you know, being able to do things like, you know, running Photon servers or other game servers that are out there. We support this idea of builds and being able to be able to roll up your builds and be able to deploy them. And as you can see, you can kind of control where the regions they're rolled out to, which is an incredibly nice way of thinking or controlling how this is managed. Next is just taking a look at kind of reports and analytics is the last piece of this. And Scott, who's on the live game side, I think we'll talk more about this, but this idea of being able to look at the analytics and really kind of understand what's going on within your game, and then being able to adjust based on that becomes incredibly important. So this is just the game manager piece, which obviously is just kind of a small portion of PlayFab and our offering. So let me hop back into our PowerPoint here, and we'll start this back up.
So, you know, Tom mentioned earlier on in the presentation, we have this sort of goal to be sort of the one SDK to rule them all. We hear from so many developers about SDK fatigue and the reliances that they end up falling into, and you get this crazy web of interactions that can cause massive problems. PlayFab is really working to solve that problem for our users by creating one SDK and a really robust set of APIs to help accomplish all the things you really need to do to operate a live game successfully. Managing your player accounts, from authentication, profile management, including cross-platform account management. You know, in the modern world, so many people want to launch on multiple platforms, whether that be iOS and Android or Xbox and PS4. Being able to manage user accounts server-side provides you not only huge customer service advantages, but a better experience for your users, so their work on one platform, their progress on one platform can carry with them to another, which is also great for PvP, to make sure you have the largest possible player base available to draw player versus player matches out of. You're not just relying on a pool of users on one platform. You can combine all your users across all of your platforms to play together and make sure you have a really robust PvP ecosystem. Data storage, again, being able to store data per player, looking in and being able to see everything that player has done, make customer service calls and adjust accounts based on that to provide great service for your users. Per title, per character, we can get into great detail on how you manage your data and how you manage that for your customers and for your game as a whole. Also gives you really powerful data capabilities to see how people are performing in different segments of your game. Commerce, massive. If you're doing a free-to-play game that relies on in-app purchases for monetization, this is really your bread and butter, and you need to be able to adjust this stuff without having to do a code push. You know, I've been in worlds where, you know, every time we want to make an economy tune or change the price of something or add an item to a catalog, it requires a push, and not only does that distract the engineering team, it also takes time and can be really frustrating. You can't be as nimble and as quick as you need to be, and it's also much harder to be able to tune the economy in different ways for different users. So being able to manage your catalogs, your virtual currencies, adjust player inventories, any of your in-game purchases, and validate your receipts on the server side makes everything not only more secure, but more performant as a business for you to operate. giving your game operators, whether that be product managers, whether it even be engineers, whether it be you as a designer, it doesn't matter. Whoever is operating your game needs the tools to be able to tune those dials and push those buttons to make sure that the business of your game is going to be successful and enjoyable for your users. That includes in-game marketing, push notifications, in-app messaging to users, being able to help motivate them through the funnel and engage in your game. Now, if your game is ad monetized, this applies as well. You need to be able to determine when to show ads, which users are going to be most receptive to them, optimize the timing, the frequency, and the reward you're giving users out of them to make sure that it's motivating the economy properly and getting you the best return out of that user attention that you can. All the APIs we have for product management as well, again, analytics and reporting. You need to see how things are working in order to be able to tune them appropriately and optimize properly. Customer segmentation, again, making sure that you are treating users the way that is most appropriate for them as an individual, or as a segment. But to them, they're individuals. And then also having the customer support tools to be able to correct anything, make sure users are having good experiences with you. Again, live service gaming is about building a long-term relationship with your users if you want to be really successful. It's not about one and done. You need to make sure that they feel good about your game, about you as a studio, and that they trust spending their time and their money with you and your products. Being social, creating the ability for people to reach out and create a viral effect with their friends, engage their friends, play against others in the game, chat with them, engage with them, have the motivation of leaderboards for your users that find that really motivating. And then even being able to create forums and websites that integrate with your game and users' accounts. We have a really great integration with a company called Duckster that allows games to have basically single sign-on based websites and forums that allow users to come in and have their game progress integrate with their forum experience and their web experience in your community site with Duckster, which is a really, really great experience and a great way to extend your communication and your engagement with your users beyond just the game screen. Multiplayer we talked about, Photon integration is fantastic. It encompasses real-time and turn-based across multiple servers, incredibly scalable, incredibly powerful, allows for real-time matchmaking, as well as allows for custom game server hosting if you have particular needs specific to your game that aren't covered by sort of the more general breadth of that technology. Also has real-time server monitoring and live spin-up and spin-down capability to really customize it for exactly what your game needs at that moment and adjust dynamically to what's going to best serve you. And also, the game logic. We have server-hosted JavaScript, Tom mentioned CloudScript as well. We can really work with you to help make our solutions as custom as they need to be for your game. It's really pretty limitless what we can do. So while every game is unique and is special and has its own unique needs, we believe that we've built a system here that is incredibly flexible and incredibly powerful to really serve anybody's needs.
So just to kind of drill down a little bit deeper on that, and I did see a few questions come in on around our APIs, which we'll look to cover either individually with people or if we have time at the end. Here's just some of the PlayFab web APIs. As we said, we really look to make this as robust and as flexible as we can. I saw some questions on things like the catalog, where you can actually access a lot of the catalog data. And then we also provide things like key value pairs so that you can continue to extend that out. One of the big things, obviously, with our API is that we continue to evolve it. So, we're always looking to understand kind of new feature needs and everything else. But these are just some of the PlayFab web APIs that are out there. I did want to once again talk quickly about this idea of CloudScript. CloudScript is incredibly important for developers, especially as you think about this idea of how you're going to run, server-based code. Obviously, you want to be very careful about things that you're running on the client, from a security perspective, as well as ensuring other things are being taken care of. What we really did is we focused on this idea of being able to capture the events, run a set of CloudScript, and then be able to kind of adjust your games on the fly. And as Scott said, things like maybe I'm running a weekend event, or just maybe I want to make some minor changes to the game, not having to, bother engineering to make these changes and then recertify and re-roll out is an incredibly powerful aspect of how you build your game, and then being able to modify that as you move forward is incredibly important. Common areas that we see CloudScript for is things like granting player rewards. So, for example, you run a battle. Maybe you want to look at if the player's at level 10, but then as all of your players hit level 10, you might want to modify that. Validating player actions, resolving interactions. I mean, these are kind of great examples of using CloudScript and exactly what we build CloudScript for. Just to take a second, as Scott mentioned, we do support multiplayer server hosting, which is incredibly powerful, as well as integrating with folks like Photon that will help kind of extend that and make it a little bit and even more robust than what we have now. So Game Manager.
Yeah, Game Manager is fantastic. You saw Tom walk you through it a bit. This is really kind of mission control for operating your game. Once it's out in the world, this is where you see how it's performing, how your campaigns are doing, where you're able to set up messages, adjust your catalog, adjust your economy. And one thing I want to take a second to point out, when we talk about catalog, it's easy to think about that just in terms of items for sale in the store, in your game. But the way PlayFab is set up, your catalog actually encompasses all of the items in your game, if you want it to. This can be as detailed as a particular weapon and being able to tune the power level of that weapon and the frequency at which users are able to find it, as well as the cost to purchase it, whether in real dollars or virtual currency. If you're looking at a collectible card game, this is the ability to add cards to the overall card pool, being able to tune the frequency they show up, being able to tune the size of packs, or even the power levels of individual cards. It's an incredibly flexible system for being able to adjust server-side every item in your game. And you can do all of that through Game Manager once it's set up, so it's easy to make changes on the fly to your game and really customize it. Having these tools available server-side without requiring client changes is incredibly advantageous to any game. In fact, I would say it's necessary for most games operating in this world. A light, lean client with a powerful, robust server-side integration makes your game as flexible as possible. It makes it stable, much more secure. It makes it lightweight, especially if you're in a mobile world. You need to keep your client lightweight so people can download it over the air, so you can do rapid updates, so you don't have performance issues with lower-end devices, which is especially powerful on Android, where you have a much wider range of device capabilities. So being able to make all of these adjustments on the server side not only gives you a lot more flexibility and power in operating your game as a business, but it gives you a great technological advantage in being able to operate your game securely, safely, and stably. So we looked at a little bit of the BI, the built-in business intelligence in the game, and again, analytics and business intelligence are critically important in this world. When you're operating a live game, you need to know its vital signs. It's just like a patient in the hospital. You need to know what's healthy and what isn't, and being able to tune these things, being able to have this data allows you to tune things to optimize your game as a business. That's really what live service gaming is about. It's about taking a game and operating it as a business, for which you need metrics. You need to know how your users are performing. How many users do you have? How are you acquiring them? How are they participating in your game? How are they spending? If you're operating an in-app purchase economy or virtual economy in your game, you need to know where players are earning money, where they're spending money in your game. You need to be able to balance that. And the power to be able to make a quick adjustment if you see something is out of whack can save you not only a lot of time, but a lot of money and a lot of headaches. You need to be able to keep your game up, running, and stable for your users, and enjoyable as possible for them, and as profitable as possible for you. And having the BI capability that is in PlayFab and through our other tools and partners, as well as the flexibility to put your data into third-party tools such as Tableau or SQL queries that you might want to do, gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of power to have a really good view on how your game is performing, how your players are interacting, so you can test, tune, and optimize your game over time and include new content and build out new pipelines and messages to operate that business as effectively as possible. So we've got, as Tom mentioned, we're working with a lot of partners. Not only is our technology flexible, but it is friendly. It plays very nicely with others. We have ready-to-go integrations, SDK integrations with some of the biggest authoring tools out there that people use. Unity, of course, Unreal Engine, Cocos, as well as the flexibility to be used across any native or custom development environments that you might be using, C++, C#, Node.js, whatever you may be using. It's a long shot that we aren't able to play very nicely with you in a very convenient fashion. As far as live ops, we integrate with Photon, we integrate with AppRead, Steam, Coverfire, Dexter. We have all these great integrations ready to go out the box in terms of being able to integrate, single sign-on through Facebook, or monetization or payments through Google Wallet, Amazon, all these other things that are just ready to go, and we have ready to rock for you. And for distribution, we work seamlessly and have live games on every major platform: PS4, Xbox, PlayStation 3. Apple, Android, through the Amazon App Store. It's very simple. I mean, popular authoring tools such as Unity and Unreal and Cocos are so popular now because they allow you to build once and sort of publish everywhere. We allow you to build once and operate everywhere across many platforms, keeping a common user base and being able to keep users active across platforms, PvP activity across platforms, and have that really consistent view and publish and integrate wherever you want to in a very seamless, simple fashion that saves you time, money, and integration costs.
All right, so let me spend a few minutes kind of talking about education. As I said earlier, this is a huge area and an area that we are trying to focus on pretty heavily. We're going to be doing some pretty serious iterations. And I did want to thank, I got a few folks, we're trying to answer questions as we go along. And we may not get to everyone now, but we will make sure that we follow up. We are looking at kind of rolling out videos, and we actually got some great feedback from folks around what kind of videos and things they would like to see. But we do focus on making it as easy as possible for game developers to roll out and integrate with PlayFab. And this is an incredibly important part of how we're building that out. We do have a full-time developer relations team. We also have full-time game operations success folks, which are really heavily focused on making that connection easier and being able to help developers kind of roll with it and get it out. We are focused on a couple of upcoming webinars, and we'll make these slides available for folks as well. But we have two that I definitely recommend, and I've got some bit.ly links here that you can get to. Scott is going to be covering game operations fundamentals. And then shortly after that, we'll be having a player communication best practices. And these are just kind of getting started. And we are going to be having additional webinars from our developer success folks on kind of technical drill downs and things that you can do to integrate with PlayFab and kind of a lot of the questions that I'm seeing coming across here. As always, PlayFab is incredibly developer-focused and publisher-focused. We do want to hear what you guys think, things that you would be interested in hearing more about. We do have a webinars at playfab.com that you can send an email to today, and that will come to some of the folks here at PlayFab, and it'll have a high impact on as we look at kind of scheduling additional education, especially as we look at what kind of white papers and videos and things that we should be rolling out. And that's kind of incredibly important as you come across. So when we think about how we're engaged, Scott, you want to talk a little bit around this?
Yeah, this is something. PlayFab's not a very old company. We've only been around a couple of years now, but what we've built out is pretty special, and we are fortunate enough to have amazing partners across the gaming industry and be trusted by a lot of folks. We have more than 6,000 game developers using our SDKs actively right now. We have 17 titles live now with over 10 million registered users between them. We have hundreds more in development across all platforms. And the great thing we've seen is that we really built this system to be able to integrate at any part of your game life cycle. Whether it's while you're building before you've gone live, whether it's when you're ready to launch and you realize you're getting to the finish line and you don't have the live systems integrated that you need, or whether you've already launched a game. We have some very high-profile customers that have launched games that have gone on to be really successful, but they realize they don't have the back-end live services to operate the game and maximize the success of it. So they have gone and integrated PlayFab after their games are already live and have hundreds of thousands or millions of users to be able to optimize and operate their game as a service beyond what they'd originally built. So whether you're ready to build your game, whether you're ready to launch your game, or whether you're ready to grow your game, it's always a good time to look at integrating PlayFab to make sure that you have the capabilities you need to run your game as a live business and make it as successful as possible, so you don't have to fear success, you can celebrate it.
Great. So obviously, as we're kind of starting to wind down, I'm actually happy to say that Zach Bragg, who's on our developer relations team, is here with us, and we're going to try to answer a couple of questions that are here. I don't know if we're going to have time, unfortunately, to answer everything, but we can definitely follow up. So thank you, thank you, Zach, for joining us.
All right. Yeah, glad to be here. I see a question here from Dale Strickler, and I was just going to end. His question is, looking at the AWS architecture that you presented, it seems like only log data goes to Redshift. Does that mean we can only do analytics on things we log, or is basic player game data also automatically sent to Redshift? And I'd like to say that both of these scenarios is true. So anything that you do send through the log data API will be in Redshift and is queryable. This is useful for custom events such as things related to your custom player data, level ups, player progression, any kind of statistics that you're tracking that are above and beyond basic things. And then the basic player game data that we are automatically logging has to do with virtual currency updates and balance changes, such as purchases or awards of these virtual currency balances, and other major factors such as first time they've logged in and every additional login. Those are, you can query separately on that. So if you want to see the first login or any additional login, and I think a couple other sets of information that's automatically logged. If you're looking for something specific, definitely let us know. If you want to see if some particular item is logged or not, let me know on the developer success alias, and I'd be happy to follow up. Next question here from Anthony DeManuel. Can you give more information about what a server is? We're using a cloud script only for the time being. Thanks. And I believe we're talking in this context of dedicated servers. And this would be something like, say you're running a Counter-Strike or Team Fortress server where you're spinning up a server that sits out in a server space and has clients that connect to that game like for a particular level. The players play in that level and the game ends, and then those servers spin down and the players disconnect. So in that model, you've got many clients connecting to one centralized server, which is giving you the ability to have really fast interchanges that are necessary for real-time strategy games, first-person shooters, and many other game types. But those are some examples. So I hope that's answering your question there, Anthony.
So we have one more question. What would be, Zach, what would be the best way for a developer to create a PlayFab user without asking him to provide an email or connect with any other social media?
Sure. So if you are on a mobile platform, we offer device ID. So that gives you a way to know every time a particular device comes on and off. And that is our best anonymous solution without plugging into any of those networks. We are experimenting with some other logins that we may announce in the future, but for now, mobile platform is really the only one that gives you that anonymous, low friction, without any ties to any social network or Game Center, Steam, anything like that.
All right, and then one last question, and unfortunately we're running out of time, so we'll do our best to follow up. And we have a question, Zach, we currently have a game using PlayFab, thank you. And what would you recommend is the best practice to have a development type catalog and settings separate from a production one? Would this best be handled in a separate application in PlayFab, or is there a way to copy an existing app?
Good question. So we have had a lot of people ask for the copying or duplicating an application or title. That is coming probably in the next quarter. But for now, I would say that if you needed a special catalog, you do have the ability to have multiple catalogs in the system. You can set one as a primary, and then others can be secondary that can be used however you decide. There's a lot of different configurations that I can imagine that being useful for. And then the other part there, let's see, settings. So catalog and settings, I'm guessing that's title settings. For that, you're really going to either want to have a copy and paste from one title to the other if you're running separate titles, or having some automated script that you run, such as through curl or another a web API emulator that can take the settings from one and then move those to another. It's certainly not a difficult thing to do, but I realize it's a little more cumbersome than it could be. So we are looking to improve those tools. Let us know if you'd like any specific suggestions, and we will, the developer success team will do our best to drive those to the product and engineering team.
Perfect. And I apparently have just messed up my PowerPoint. So let me get over to my last slide here. That's wonderful. There we go. All right, so much for my PowerPoint skills for today. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate it. We're kind of running out of our time, so I do appreciate everyone taking the opportunity to join us today. We have a few more questions that we actually didn't get to, so Zach, Scott, and myself will kind of work on those and make sure that we can get some information over to people. And we definitely hope that you'll join us for our next set of webinars as we start looking at game operations. And as always, PlayFab really is committed to the success of our developer and our publisher community. So we definitely would love to hear any feedback you may have or requests for content that you may need, and we'll see what we can do. You can send that over to webinars@playfab.com. So with that, I'm going to thank Scott and Zach for joining me, and we're going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thank you.